Imagine for a moment that you're the most powerful person in the world. You control vast armies, endless wealth, and the fate of millions of people rests in your hands. You could have anything you desire, indulge in any pleasure, and yet, you choose to spend your evenings writing personal reflections about virtue, mortality, and the fleeting nature of worldly success. This wasn't fiction. This was the reality of Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher emperor who ruled the Roman Empire at its peak in the 2nd century AD. Marcus Aurelius Antoninus, who lived from 121 to 180 AD, represents one of history's most fascinating paradoxes. Here was a man who wielded absolute power over the known world, yet dedicated his life to understanding how to live with humility, acceptance, and inner peace. His personal journal, which we now know as Meditations, was never intended for publication. These were private thoughts, written during military campaigns and quiet moments of reflection, where the Emperor of Rome wrestled with the same fundamental questions that keep us awake at night. How do we find meaning in suffering? How do we deal with difficult people? How do we maintain our integrity when everything around us seems chaotic? What makes Marcus Aurelius extraordinary isn't just that he was a Stoic philosopher. It's that he was a Stoic philosopher who had to apply these principles while managing plagues, wars, political intrigue, and personal tragedies. He lost multiple children, faced betrayal from trusted generals, and dealt with the constant pressure of making decisions that affected millions of lives. Yet through it all, he maintained his commitment to Stoic principles, focusing on what he could control, accepting what he couldn't, and striving to act with virtue regardless of external circumstances. The philosophy of Stoicism, which Marcus Aurelius both practiced and refined, teaches us that our happiness and peace of mind don't depend on external events, but on how we choose to respond to them. This ancient wisdom has found remarkable relevance in our modern world, where we're constantly bombarded with information, faced with uncertainty, and struggling to maintain our mental health in an increasingly complex society. Today, nearly 2,000 years after Marcus Aurelius wrote his personal reflections by candlelight in a military tent on the Germanic frontier, his insights are being rediscovered by therapists, business leaders, athletes, and ordinary people seeking practical wisdom for navigating life's challenges. Cognitive behavioral therapy, one of the most effective forms of modern psychotherapy, draws heavily on Stoic principles. Silicon Valley executives quote his writings in boardrooms. Olympic athletes use Stoic techniques to manage pressure and setbacks. The questions Marcus Aurelius grappled with: how do we find tranquility in chaos? How do we maintain our values when others abandon theirs? How do we accept loss and change while still striving for excellence? Are perhaps more relevant today than ever before. In our journey together, we'll explore how the wisdom of this remarkable emperor can help us build resilience, find purpose, and cultivate inner peace in our turbulent modern world. Now that we've glimpsed the extraordinary life of Marcus Aurelius, let's dive into the heart of what made his philosophy so powerful and why it continues to transform lives today. Stoicism isn't just abstract philosophical theory. It's a practical toolkit for living, built on 4 fundamental pillars that Marcus Aurelius mastered and applied every single day of his reign. The first pillar is perhaps the most revolutionary: the dichotomy of control. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." This principle teaches us to clearly distinguish between what we can control and what we cannot. We can control our thoughts, our responses, our efforts, and our character. We cannot control other people's actions, natural disasters, economic downturns, or even our own mortality. This sounds simple, Yet most of our daily stress comes from trying to control things that are fundamentally outside our influence. Think about your last argument with a family member, your frustration with traffic, or your anxiety about a job interview. How much of that emotional turmoil came from focusing on outcomes you couldn't guarantee rather than on your own preparation and response? Marcus Aurelius faced rebellions, plagues, and personal losses, yet he found peace by consistently redirecting his attention to what remained within his power, his duty, his integrity, and his commitment to serving the common good. The second pillar is virtue as the sole good. For Stoics, virtue, which encompasses wisdom, justice, courage, and self-discipline, is the only thing that can truly make us happy and fulfilled. External things like wealth, fame, health, or even relationships are indifferent. They're neither inherently good nor bad. This doesn't mean we don't care about these things or work toward them, but rather that we don't let them determine our sense of worth or peace of mind. Marcus Aurelius could have lived in luxury and self-indulgence, but he found greater satisfaction in fulfilling his duties with excellence, treating people fairly, facing challenges with courage, and maintaining self-control even under extreme pressure. In our modern context, this pillar helps us understand why achieving external goals often leaves us feeling empty, while acting with integrity and purpose provides lasting satisfaction. The third pillar is the practice of negative visualization, or premeditatio malorum. This involves regularly imagining the loss of things we value, not to become pessimistic, but to appreciate what we have and prepare mentally for life's inevitable changes. Marcus Aurelius frequently reminded himself of mortality, writing, "It never ceases to amaze me. We all love ourselves more than other people, but care more about their opinion than our own." This practice isn't about dwelling on worst-case scenarios, but about building psychological resilience and gratitude. When we regularly contemplate that our health, relationships, and possessions are temporary, we become less attached to them and more appreciative of them while they last. Modern research in psychology confirms that this kind of mental preparation actually reduces anxiety and increases life satisfaction. The fourth pillar is the view from above, the practice of taking a cosmic perspective on our problems and experiences. Marcus Aurelius often wrote about imagining himself from the viewpoint of the universe, seeing his troubles as tiny parts of a vast, interconnected whole. He wrote, "Remember that very little disturbs the wise man, for he is not disturbed by anything external, and he is not disturbed by his own passions." This perspective doesn't minimize our experiences, but helps us respond to them with greater wisdom and less emotional reactivity. When we're stuck in traffic, facing criticism, or dealing with disappointment, the view from above reminds us that these moments are temporary parts of a larger journey, and that our response to them matters more than the events themselves. These four pillars work together to create Marcus Aurelius's remarkable resilience and effectiveness as both a leader and a human being. But how do we actually apply these ancient principles in our fast-paced, technology-driven modern lives? That question, how do we apply these timeless principles in our modern world, is exactly what makes Marcus Aurelius so relevant today. The emperor who ruled nearly 2,000 years ago faced remarkably similar challenges to what we encounter in our daily lives. Overwhelming responsibilities, difficult people, unexpected crises, and the constant pressure to make decisions with incomplete information. Let's start with something we all face: the morning routine. Marcus Aurelius began each day by writing in his personal journal, what we now know as meditations. But he wasn't just recording events, he was actively practicing Stoic principles. He would remind himself of the dichotomy of control by writing things like, "When you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, the people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly." This wasn't pessimism, it was preparation. By anticipating challenges and focusing on his own response rather than trying to control others' behavior, he set himself up for a day of resilience rather than frustration. You can apply this same principle to your morning routine. Instead of immediately checking your phone and allowing external events to dictate your emotional state, spend 5 minutes writing about what you can control today: your effort at work, your patience with family members, your commitment to your health, your response to whatever unexpected challenges arise. This simple practice shifts your mindset from reactive to proactive, from victim to agent of your own experience. Consider how this applies to one of our most common modern stressors: social media and the opinions of others. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "How much trouble he avoids who does not look to see what his neighbor says or does." In our hyper-connected world, we're constantly exposed to others' opinions, achievements, and criticisms. The Stoic approach isn't to disconnect entirely, but to remember that other people's posts, comments, and judgments fall squarely in the category of things we cannot control. When someone criticizes your work, when a friend posts about their perfect vacation while you're struggling with bills, when political debates flood your feed, these are opportunities to practice the second pillar, virtue as the sole good. Your worth isn't determined by likes, shares, or approval from others. It's determined by whether you're acting with wisdom, justice, courage, and self-discipline in your own life. This perspective doesn't make you indifferent to feedback or disconnected from community, but it prevents external validation from becoming the foundation of your self-worth. The practice of negative visualization becomes particularly powerful when applied to our relationships and career. Marcus Aurelius regularly contemplated the temporary nature of his position, his relationships, and his life itself. In our context, this might mean occasionally imagining what it would be like to lose your job, to have a serious health scare, or to lose someone you love. This isn't morbid thinking. It's a practice that generates profound gratitude and helps us prioritize what truly matters. When you practice negative visualization about your relationship, you stop taking your partner for granted and become more present in your interactions. When you contemplate the possibility of losing your job, you appreciate your current opportunities while also building the psychological flexibility to adapt if circumstances change. When you remember that your health isn't guaranteed, you're more likely to make choices that support your well-being today. The view from above becomes especially relevant when dealing with modern anxiety and overwhelm. Marcus Aurelius would imagine his problems from the perspective of the cosmos, seeing them as tiny parts of a vast interconnected universe. You can apply this same technique when you're stuck in traffic by remembering that this moment is a microscopic part of your life journey. When you're facing a work deadline, you can zoom out to see it as one small challenge in a career that's one part of a life that's one brief moment in human history. This perspective isn't meant to make your problems seem meaningless, but to help you respond to them with appropriate proportionality. The presentation that's causing you anxiety? It matters enough to prepare well for it, but not enough to lose sleep or sacrifice your health. The relationship conflict that feels overwhelming? It's worth addressing thoughtfully, but it's also one conversation in a lifetime of interactions. But perhaps the most powerful way Marcus Aurelius's philosophy applies to modern life is in how it transforms our relationship with failure and setbacks. In our achievement-oriented culture, we often see obstacles as problems to be avoided. Stoicism teaches us to see them as opportunities for growth, or as Marcus Aurelius put it, the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. This radical reframe changes everything about how we approach challenges in our careers, relationships, and personal development.